All right, welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be focusing on something pretty hot in the e-mountain biking world, the Amflow PL Carbon.
Ooh, yeah.
This bike's making waves, and not just because of how it rides.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about drone giant DJI
Yeah.
jumping into the e-bike scene with their own motor and battery system.
Yeah, that's right.
And that has everyone buzzing. So
Yeah. What's interesting to me is that DJI isn't really known for doing things halfway, right? I mean, they're renowned for packing a ton of power and tech into these really small packages. So their foray into e-bikes. It's definitely raising some eyebrows.
For sure, for sure. And to really get into this, we've got an in-depth review from an Australian cycling magazine. And we're going to break down what makes this bike so unique. So are you with us?
Oh, absolutely. Let's dive in.
All right, so first things first, the motor. This is the heart of any e-bike. And the Amflow PL Carbon boasts the DJI Avinox M1. Now, the review throws around some pretty impressive stats here. 105 Nm of torque, 850 W of peak power, and a weight of just 2.58 kilograms.
Yeah, those are some impressive numbers, especially when you compare them to more established players like, Bosch and Shimano. I mean, this motor's punching well above its weight class.
Yeah, but what does all that tech jargon actually mean for the rider? I mean, 105 Nm of torque sounds like a lot, but how does that translate to the trail?
So imagine this. You're facing this steep climb, one that would normally have you huffing and puffing, but with the Avinox M1, it's almost like you've got this hidden superpower. That torque translates into this incredible climbing ability, making even the most challenging ascents feel, manageable.
So it's not just about speed then, it's about conquering obstacles.
Yeah.
And really expanding what's possible on an e-bike.
Yeah, precisely. And there's more.
Ooh.
The Avinox also has this boost mode that cranks things up even further, delivering a massive 120 Nm of torque and 1,000 W of peak power for these short bursts.
Hold on, 120 Nm. That's got to feel like launching out of a rocket. But I imagine all that power needs a solid frame to handle it.
You're telling me. And that's another area where this Amflow PL Carbon really shines. The full carbon frame weighs a shockingly light 2.27 kilograms, and that's before adding the shock and motor.
Wow.
It's actually even lighter than some frames on non-electric mountain bikes.
That's almost unbelievable. So we're talking about this incredibly powerful motor in the super lightweight package, but how does that impact the overall riding experience?
Well, the reviewer raves about the bike's agility and maneuverability. They say it feels much closer to a traditional mountain bike than like a bulky e-bike, which is a big deal for riders who want that nimble, responsive feel.
Yeah, I bet. So we've got power, agility, but what about range? It wouldn't be a very practical e-bike if it ran out of juice after a short ride.
Right, but don't worry. Amflow hasn't skimped on the battery. You actually have a choice between a 600 watts or 800 watt battery, both surprisingly light for their capacity.
That's good to hear. And with all this emphasis on performance, did they manage to squeeze in any other cool features?
They certainly did. The battery actually uses gain-end technology, which allows for this super fast charging. Imagine this. You stop for a quick lunch break, and in just 90 minutes, you can charge your battery from 0% to 75%.
Man, that's perfect for those epic all-day adventures. You grab a bite to eat, and you're back on the trails with a nearly full battery. But speaking of adventures, how did the Amflow PL Carbon perform in their standardized range test? Did all that power drain the battery quickly?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. Despite its high power output, the Amflow nearly topped the charts in the range test, covering an impressive 2,460 meters of climbing.
That's seriously impressive. It seems like they've managed to achieve both power and efficiency, which is a rare combination. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've talked about the motor, the frame, the battery, but what about the actual riding experience?
Well, the reviewer goes into great detail about that, and we're going to dig into it in the next part of our deep dive, so stay tuned.
Okay, so we've established that this Amflow PL Carbon has got some seriously impressive specs, but specs only tell part of the story, right? So let's shift gears a bit and delve into the actual riding experience. The reviewer, Dan, he put this bike through its paces on a variety of trails, from flowy single track to challenging technical climbs?
Yeah, and what's interesting is that he didn't just hop on and ride. He actually took the time to fine-tune the bike's setup to match his riding style and the demands of the terrain. He talks about adjusting the saddle position for optimal weight distribution on steep climbs, really maximizing that power transfer from the motor.
So he's not just blindly accepting the factory settings then. He's dialing in the bike to get the most out of it. It sounds like he's a pretty experienced rider, though. Do you think those adjustments are something that the average e-biker would need to worry about?
That's a good point. While those tweaks might seem like something only a seasoned pro would consider, they actually highlight a really important aspect of this bike. Its adaptability. Whether you're a casual rider or a seasoned veteran, the Amflow PL Carbon offers a range of adjustments to personalize the fit and feel.
Yeah, that makes sense. So even if you're not like a suspension guru, you can still fine-tune the bike to suit your preferences. But let's get back to the riding experience. What were Dan's impressions of that DJI Avinox motor out on the trail? Did it live up to all those impressive specs we were talking about earlier?
Oh, he was absolutely blown away by the power delivery. He describes the acceleration as bonkers even, comparing it favorably to other high-end e-bike motors he's tested, like the Shimano EP801
Yeah.
and the Bosch Performance Line CX.
Wow, so it's not just marketing hype then. The power is genuinely noticeable on the trail. But how did that power actually translate to real-world riding scenarios? Did it make like a tangible difference in his riding?
Absolutely. He specifically highlights the bike's exceptional climbing ability, claiming that it feels unmatched compared to any other full-powered EMTBs he's ridden. He even mentions that the combination of the powerful motor, the sensitive suspension, and the balanced riding position, it makes those challenging climbs not only conquerable, but actually enjoyable.
That's a key point. It's not just about making it to the top. It's about enjoying the process of getting there. But e-bikes aren't just about climbing. How did the Amflow PL Carbon handle on descents? Did it feel like heavy and cumbersome? Or did it surprise him with its agility?
Well, Dan was actually pleasantly surprised by the bike's descending capabilities. He calls it a very competent descender, praising its lightweight design and overall maneuverability. He even compares it favorably to some traditional non-electric mountain bikes he's ridden in terms of how nimble it feels on technical single track.
So it sounds like they've managed to strike a balance between power and agility, which is no easy feat. Did he elaborate on like what made those descents so enjoyable? Was it the suspension, geometry, or like a combination of factors?
He specifically praises the small bump sensitivity and the overall support provided by the Fox suspension, and the 4-bar linkage design. Now, a 4-bar linkage is basically a type of suspension system that's known for its efficiency and plush feel. It essentially allows the rear wheel to move up and down independently of the pedals, so that results in a smoother, more controlled ride.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I always appreciate it when you break down those technical terms and explain how they actually impact the riding experience. So the 4-bar linkage contributes to that smooth and grippy feel Dan described, allowing him to tackle rough terrain with confidence. But I know Dan has been riding a lot of mullet bikes lately, the ones with a 29 wheel in the front and a 27.5 wheel in the back. Was he happy sticking with the dual 29 wheels on the Amflow?
That's a great question. And it seems like Dan felt that the dual 29 setup was the right choice for this particular bike, especially considering its focus on fast-paced trail riding. Rather than extreme downhill shredding, he felt those larger wheels enhance stability and rollover, especially on those technical climbs that the motor makes accessible.
So while the option to switch to a 27.5 rear wheel exists for those who prefer it, it seems like Dan found the stock setup to be well suited to the bike's intended purpose. Now, I know Dan was actively looking for downsides to this bike. I mean, every bike has its quirks, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Did he encounter any significant drawbacks?
To be honest, the downsides he mentions are pretty minor. He notes some freewheel rattle on descents, but it wasn't as noticeable as some other e-bikes he's experienced. He also mentions the possibility of increased wear and tear on components, like the drivetrain and rear tire, due to that motor's high power output.
Yeah, those are valid concerns, especially for riders who are really pushing the bike's limits. But it's good to hear that those downsides weren't like deal breakers for him. Did he have any insights into the long-term durability and reliability of the bike, especially considering it's a first-generation product from a relatively new brand?
Yeah, he actually addresses that directly. He mentions that the bike's held up remarkably well throughout his testing. With no major mechanical issues or electrical glitches, he was especially impressed by the build quality and the smooth operation of that DJI Avinox system.
That's reassuring. It seems like Amflow put a lot of effort into ensuring a positive user experience, even for those early adopters.
Yeah.
But I got to ask about that motor swap you mentioned earlier. Did that raise any red flags for him?
Not at all. He actually found the process to be surprisingly straightforward, thanks to clear documentation and user-friendly software. He even commented that it highlighted Amflow's commitment to supporting their customers and addressing any potential issues.
So a minor hiccup that turned into a positive experience. That's always good to hear. Now, we've talked about the motor's performance, the handling on descents, the durability, but we can't forget about that impressive range we discussed earlier. Did Dan's real-world riding experience match up with those standardized range test results?
It absolutely did. He confirms that the Amflow PL Carbon delivers on its promise of long-lasting battery life, allowing him to cover significant distances and elevation without worrying about running out of juice.
That's fantastic. It seems like they've really managed to find that sweet spot between power, range, and overall ride quality. But I'm curious, with all this focus on performance and cutting-edge technology, did they overlook any, practical considerations? What about things like frame protection, cable routing, or ease of maintenance?
That's a smart question, and it seems like Dan was paying attention to those details as well. He points out the well-designed chainstay protector, the robust armoring around the motor, and the secure internal cable routing. Now, these features not only contribute to a clean aesthetic, but they also protect the bike from wear and tear and ensure a quiet, rattle-free ride. He also mentions that the bolts are clearly marked with their respective torque values, making maintenance a breeze for those who like to tinker with their bikes.
So they haven't just focused on the flashy features. They've also considered the practical aspects that contribute to a long-lasting and enjoyable ownership experience. Did he express any concerns about potential weak points or areas that might require extra attention over time?
He did mention the combination of a trunnion shock mount with an elongated yoke, suggesting that it might be more susceptible to side loading, particularly for heavier riders or those who favor aggressive riding styles. Now, a trunnion mount is basically a wider, more robust type of shock mount that's becoming increasingly common on mountain bikes. And the elongated yoke refers to the shape of the rear suspension linkage.
Okay, so while it's not necessarily a flaw, it's something to be mindful of, especially for those who push their bikes to the limits. But overall, it sounds like this Amflow PL Carbon is a well-rounded machine that delivers on its promises. We've covered a lot of ground here, from the impressive specs to the nuanced riding experience, and even touched on the practical aspects of ownership. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the bigger picture. What does the arrival of this Amflow PL Carbon with its groundbreaking DJI Avinox motor mean for the future of EMTBs?
That's a great question, and one that the reviewer himself ponders. He raises the issue of a potential EMTB power arms race, wondering where it might end, and what it means for the very definition of mountain biking. If DJI is setting a new standard with this level of power and technology, will other brands follow suit? And if so, how will that impact the riding experience and the types of trails we ride?
It's definitely a thought-provoking question. Are we entering an era where power becomes a dominant factor in EMTB design, potentially overshadowing other aspects like handling, agility, and even the pure joy of riding?
It's a valid concern. The reviewer also wonders if there might be a market for a longer travel version of the Amflow PL Carbon, something even more capable for those who crave extreme terrain. After all, if you can conquer any climb, why not push the limits on the descents as well?
It seems like this Amflow PL Carbon has opened up a whole new realm of possibilities, blurring the lines between what we traditionally considered an EMTB and a full-fledged enduro bike. But before we get too carried away with speculation, let's step back and recap what we've learned about this groundbreaking machine. So we've covered a ton with this Amflow PL Carbon, the impressive tech, the riding experience, even the potential impact on the future of e-mountain biking. It's a lot to process. So is this bike worth all the hype?
Well, based on this review, it really seems like the Amflow PL Carbon is more than just hype. It's a well-designed EMTB that delivers on its promises of power, agility, and range.
Yeah, for sure. And it sounds like they didn't just throw a bunch of tech at it and hope for the best, right? They've really considered all the little details, from the frame protection to those user-friendly maintenance aspects.
Exactly. And that attention to detail is probably why the reviewer was so impressed with the bike's overall performance and reliability. Remember, this is a first-generation product, and they've already managed to create something that feels refined and well executed.
That's a really good point. It seems like Amflow is serious about making a mark in the e-bike world, and they're off to a really strong start. But what I find most fascinating is that this bike has sparked this larger conversation about the future of EMTBs.
Oh, absolutely. The Amflow PL Carbon challenges our preconceived notions of what an EMTB can even be. It's not just about making pedaling easier. It's about pushing the boundaries of what's even possible on two wheels.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, where do we go from here? Is this the beginning of an EMTB power arms race, with each brand just trying to outdo the other? Or will we see a more balanced approach, focusing on the overall riding experience rather than just sheer power?
Those are questions we can't answer definitively right now, but they're definitely worth pondering. The Amflow PL Carbon has thrown down the gauntlet.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see how other manufacturers respond.
Yeah, maybe this will lead to a whole new category of EMTBs, something that really blurs the lines between trail bikes and enduro bikes with even more travel and capability.
That's certainly a possibility. Imagine an e-bike that can handle the most technical descents, while still offering the assistance to conquer those grueling climbs. The possibilities are pretty exciting.
It definitely feels like we're at a turning point in the evolution of e-mountain biking. But for now, let's bring it back to the Amflow PL Carbon. For you, the listener, what does this bike represent? Is it just another EMTB, or is it something more?
I think this bike is more than just a collection of components and technology. It's a statement. It says that we can push the limits of what's possible, that we can redefine our expectations, and that we can continue to evolve our understanding of what it means to ride a mountain bike.
Well said. So if you're in the market for an EMTB that delivers on its promises and pushes the boundaries of what's possible, the Amflow PL Carbon is definitely worth considering.
And who knows, maybe it'll inspire you to redefine your own riding experience and explore new horizons. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.